In episode 4 of The Acolyte, we saw the return of Jedi Master Ki-Adi-Mundi. You'll remember him from the Star Wars prequels and Star Wars The Clone Wars. And boy did this cameo cause quite the stir.
What the f*** what do you mean? How? How have you... Oh man, you're just ruining it. Look at my lips, you're ruining it.
Hey, welcome to ScreenCrush. I'm Colton Ogburn, and I'm going to be telling you exactly why Ki-Adi-Mundi's appearance in The Acolyte makes perfect sense, doesn't break canon, and how it makes the prequels and the overall Skywalker saga even better.
Hey, you're talking about that droid attack on the Wookiees guy.
What about the droid attack on the Wookiees?
Yes, and speaking of, we've got this great Star Wars Sesame Street parody shirt featuring Cookie Monster asking about the droid attack on the cookies, as well as lots of other great Star Wars designs up on our merch store right now. Shopping our merch store is the best way to support our channel. Thank you so much for your support. Many pointed out that old Conehead shouldn't even be alive at this time because he wasn't born yet, citing the Star Wars Wikipedia, which had Mundi's birthday listed as 93 BBY before the Battle of Yavin, which took place in Star Wars Episode 4.
How old do you think I am?
I don't know. 102?
I'm only 81.
But it's important that we keep in mind that Mundi's age was never established in canon. None of the Star Wars movies or shows never ever mention this Jedi's age. The only reason we've had an age for this character is because back in the 90s there was an interactive CD-ROM, kind of like a computer game, that was released with The Phantom Menace, and on that disc you could see the ages of various new characters. And they listed Ki-Adi-Mundi's age as 60 years old and his birthplace as the planet of Sarah. So Wikipedia, rightfully so, listed his birthday as 93 BBY because why not? That's what the disc said. It was our only knowledge of what his age might be, and we could assume that that was his canon age unless otherwise stated. When Lucas was in charge, anything and everything that wasn't a movie was subject to change by George Lucas, and Lucasfilm had multiple levels of Star Wars canon, and that top level canon was coined G canon, aka George canon. Anything beneath G canon could be considered canon to the movies if and until George did something to change it. So really, if it wasn't in the movies, it was never canon to begin with.
As the creator of Mara Jade,
Wait! I am not the creator of Mara Jade, and I want you to get out of this office right now.
In fact, Lucas himself made a change from this CD-ROM in Attack of the Clones. This CD-ROM has Mundi's lightsaber color listed as purple.
I dare you, I double dare you, mother...
But as we saw in Attack of the Clones, The Clone Wars, and Revenge of the Sith, Mundi has a blue lightsaber. Hell, this ROM even says that Mundi's special power is insight into the dark side.
That's not how the Force works.
So watching these prominent creators and whiners on Twitter lose their mind over Wikipedia updating Ki-Adi's age was a little funny, but it was also just sad to see how uninformed some of these so-called experts are when it comes to Star Wars and George Lucas.
Probably worth the Google.
And remember, this is all before Disney's acquisition. This was while George was still in full control. They had a tiered system in place for what was considered canon to the Star Wars universe, and man, was it messy. I already mentioned that we had G canon, George canon. That level included the films and anything directly from Lucas. Next we had T canon, that was television canon. This would include the Clone Wars animated series, as well as the never-made Underworld TV series. C canon, this is continuity canon. This included most of the novels, comics, and video games. So in this tier list, the age of Ki-Adi-Mundi would be C canon. S canon, that's secondary canon. This consisted of stories that were released before Lucasfilm started focusing on maintaining a somewhat organized continuity. And then you have N canon, stories that were never considered even a little bit canon. Oh, and there was also D canon. This was for the cartoon series Star Wars Detours that never aired.
That's a lot of information to get in 30 seconds.
Now, the way these levels of canon worked was that the G canon was the ultimate canon. It was canon. But these other levels could also be considered canon if a level above its tier didn't contradict it. So if there was something in S canon that didn't violate anything in G canon, you could consider that canon. But if there was something in S canon that, say, T canon canceled out, then that is no longer considered canon. You see, George Lucas and Lucasfilm never wanted to appear as if they were flagrantly violating canon, so they said from the jump that all of this other stuff that isn't the movies is subject to change if George or one of the movies wants to override it.
Oh, that is really confusing.
It is, man, and something that Disney did was simplify this into two categories, canon and legends, and they fully canonized shows like the Clone Wars animated series. But something else Disney has done is embraced bringing in legends characters and stories like Thrawn into the canon. And by calling non-canon material legends, it leaves the door open for those things to become canon, but if anything in new material contradicts legends, then it's simply not canon. Now, Ki-Adi-Mundi's age, for example, it was once assumed that he was about 74 years old when he died in Revenge of the Sith. All based on a CD-ROM game that was released in the 90s, which was never considered canon, not even by George Lucas. But now we know that Mundi is actually about 100 years older. And this isn't the first time that this has happened. Qui-Gon Jinn's age was changed years ago, and no one batted an eye. In Legends, Qui-Gon Jinn was born in 92 BBY, making him 60 years old in The Phantom Menace. But we know from a canon novel that Qui-Gon was actually 48 when he died. So let's be honest, no one actually gives a shit about Ki-Adi-Mundi's age being changed. The loudest critics are just using this as another way to make it seem like the Acolyte is ruining Star Wars, and like the creators of this show know nothing about Star Wars.
I can feel your anger.
But in reality, the inclusion of Ki-Adi-Mundi in this series is brilliant, and here's why. Jedi Master Ki-Adi-Mundi perfectly embodies the hubris of the Jedi during the time of the High Republic and into the prequel era, the same hubris that would lead to the Jedi's ultimate demise. Now, Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn told the Jedi Council that he went toe-to-toe with what he believed to be a Sith Lord.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing.
So this line was actually the topic of Acolyte criticism before the show even came out. Many used this line as evidence that the Acolyte was breaking canon if we saw any Jedi encounter this red-sabered foe. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, well, technically you can have a bad guy in a black cloak with a scary helmet with a red lightsaber using the dark side of the Force without them technically being a Sith. I mean, that is technically true. Yes, Kylo Ren, for example, was not a Sith. But for all intents and purposes, and for casual Star Wars fans, I think pulling a technicality and saying, well, this red-sabered menace wasn't technically a Sith, I think that would be a bit of a cop-out. Plus, we did hear old Darth Teeth say that a Jedi-like soul might call him
Sith.
Whether or not this guy is actually a Sith is a discussion for another time, but I think we can all agree that if word of what happened on planet Kafar got back to Ki-Adi-Mundi or the High Council, this line in Phantom Menace would be a little odd, unless there was a cover-up. Now, in a moment, I want to tell you guys about a Jedi cover-up of the Sith that has totally been teased in the prequels and Clone Wars. But first, let's act on the assumption that Ki-Adi-Mundi really had no idea that the Sith returned. In Episode 4, Mundi never sees the Dark Lord. He never sees a red saber, nor had any of the other Jedi at that point. And the idea of the Sith being involved with May never even crossed their minds.
She doesn't know her master's identity.
An apprentice who doesn't know their master. It's absurd.
Once again showing that our boy Mundi is always wrong. He was wrong when he dismissed Qui-Gon's encounter with a Sith Lord. He was wrong in Attack of the Clones when he dismissed Padme's concerns that Count Dooku, a former Jedi, was responsible for the attempt on her life.
He is a political idealist, not a murderer.
In the Clone Wars series, when Ahsoka Tano was framed for the murder of Letta Termond, Mundi was one of the most vocal members of the Jedi Council who bought into this framing and believed that Ahsoka was guilty. He's always wrong about the dark side and the manipulations of the Sith,
making him yet another stupid bitch! Are you seeing a pattern?
And that's what this entire series is about, the hubris of the Jedi being responsible for their own downfall. We're seeing the first steps in the fall of the Jedi Order in this show, and having Mundi once again be one of the most vocal of the Jedi to dismiss any threat to their power is a perfect way to link this series with the prequels and the overall Skywalker saga.
Bring in the flamethrowers!
The only good bug is a dead bug.
Ki-Adi-Mundi represents the polar opposite of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. Luke in The Last Jedi represented the most skeptical and pessimistic side of the Jedi, while a character like Ki-Adi-Mundi represents the hubris and the overconfidence of the Jedi.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Both of these mentalities allowed for the dark side to prosper, once again amplifying the message that balance is the key to combating the dark side of the Force. After all, the Chosen One prophecy didn't mention the light side of the Force or the Jedi. It simply spoke of bringing balance to the Force. So, in closing, was I expecting to see Ki-Adi-Mundi in this series? No, because as a massive Star Wars nerd myself, I knew Ki-Adi-Mundi's birthday, and I was scratching my head just like the rest of you when I saw him pop up in ACOLYTE. But I gotta say, it was certainly a welcome surprise to see the face of Jedi hubris appear and show even more hubris for these final days of the High Republic era, and for him to be present for the Sith's first steps to their master plan to return. Like I've said before, Palpatine's assurgence to Supreme Chancellor in Phantom Menace was one of the final steps of the Sith's master plan for revenge and taking over. The Acolyte is showing us the beginnings of that plan, and it makes perfect sense to see our out-of-touch, cocky Jedi Master, Ki-Adi-Mundi, be present for the Jedi's failure to stop the Sith's plan at the start. And here's the other thing. Ki-Adi's hubris could be going beyond just being wrong. We could learn from this series that he is actually part of a massive cover-up. Jedi cover-ups are super common. Hell, we're seeing one take place right now in the Acolyte, with them hiding their discoveries from the High Council.
We must alert the High Council.
The High Council would be obliged to inform the Senate. We should handle this ourselves.
In Clone Wars, we saw Yoda and the Council decide to hide their discovery that the Sith were behind the creation of the clone army.
Cover up this discovery. We must. No one, not even the Chancellor, may know.
5 minutes later.
Execute Order 66.
So in episode 5, we saw most, but not all, of the Jedi killed by Cameo. And he even says,
"So now I have to kill every single last one of you."
But Sol did escape, and we still have 3 episodes to find out whether or not Sol is even able to inform the Council of his potential Sith encounter. And if he does, we could see old Master Yoda, who is alive at this time, and who is notorious for Jedi cover-ups, step in and insist that this discovery be covered up because the Jedi cannot afford for their power to be questioned or doubted by the Republic. And it would make this scene in The Phantom Menace where Ki-Adi says the Sith have been extinct for a millennium, and Yoda looks over to Mace like, uh-oh, all the more better. So guys, that's why that I think the inclusion of Ki-Adi-Mundi was actually a great choice for the Acolyte, and I love how it ties this universe together and further showcases the hubris of the Jedi and the rise of the Sith. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, or you can at me on Twitter. And if you're new here, be sure to subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Colton Ogburn.